Final Fantasy XVI was first revealed nearly 2 years ago, with Square Enix claiming that basic development was already completed. Despite that, Square Enix has been comparatively silent on the newest entry in its long-running franchise until very recently, when it finally released a brand new trailer featuring Econ's version of Summons. The trailer shed more light on what to expect from the still mysterious Final Fantasy 16, but it left fans with plenty of other questions. How will Econ's feature in the combat? And will Clive work with the party, a staple going back to the series' original NES days, or will he be flying solo? Speaking with IGN in a new interview, producer Naoki Yoshida provided some more insight into how combat, summons, and other mechanics will work in Final Fantasy XVI, in the process confirming that it will once again feature party mechanics in one form or another. We didn't want to overwhelm users in our newest trailer, so we focused solely on Clive's battles. That said, for most of his journey, Clive will accompanied by one or more companions. These companions will participate in battle as well as trade banter with Clive. That said, the party members will be driven so as to allow players to focus solely on controlling Clive. Yoshida explains. While Yoshida wouldn't confirm one way or another, one of those party members could include Torgal, the wolf pup from the original trailer. Yoshida said fans will have wait and see regarding whether the pup will eventually play a role in the combat, promising more info on party soon. Final Fantasy XVI's combat will translate summons into players' actions. One way or another, it seems like it will be at least somewhat similar to Final Fantasy 15, which also featured Al control party members. This has been a trend in the series since it moved away from turn-based combat, with even Final Fantasy VII Remake embracing action-based combat. On that note, Final Fantasy VII Remake has been widely praised for balancing depth and nonsense with speed and excitement. Yoshida says that Final Fantasy XVI will play somewhat different. Final Fantasy VII Remake would not exist without the original Final Fantasy VII, and those original systems ultimately influenced what Remake became. Final Fantasy XVI, however, is a completely new game with a completely different concept. In order to take the series in a new direction, rather than build off old battle systems, director Hiroshi Takai and battle director Ryota Suzuki made real-time action their focus. Yoshida explains that translating traditional summon abilities into player actions and allowing for the real-time swapping and chaining of these abilities in battle has allowed us to create a system that not only looks great but feels really good to play. Summons featured heavily in Final Fantasy XVI's most recent trailer, replete with the customary pyrotechnics that fans have come to expect from such sequences. Ifrit, Ramah, Bahamut, and Shiva, all of whom appear in the trailer, have been Final Fantasy mainstays for many years, and their importance has grown alongside the franchise's leap in fidelity. Final Fantasy XVI is its own entity, separate from Final Fantasy XIV and the other games in the series, so you won't find as many tributes as you will in Final Fantasy XIV. In Final Fantasy 16, icons are acting weapons of mass destruction wielded by dominance capable of leveling nations. Many fans compared their visually spectacular sequences to watching the likes of Godzilla, but Yoshida says the battle type and scale are somewhat fluid. Econs appear in many different situations and iterations. There is no one design concept that covers all of them. Some will face Clive as fierce enemies, some will be friends and come to Clive's aid. Yoshida explains there will also be times where the player will control an econ in real time. Battling other econs, the battle type and scale are somewhat fluid and change seamlessly in real time, depending on the battle, keeping things at maximum excitement while maintaining immersion. These various types of econ driven action oriented battles are one of the main selling points of Final Fantasy 16 and will be bringing more to you in the coming months about them. Final Fantasy 16 won't be a Final Fantasy theme park this time. While Final Fantasy 16 will no doubt be compared to more recent single-player entries from the series, its connections to Final Fantasy 14 can't be ignored. Final Fantasy 16 features an all-star cast of developers from within Square Enix, many of whom worked on Square Enix's acclaimed MMOs, started with Yoshida himself.